This is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds for their YouTube channel content as well, including today's Football at 4 with Adam Caplan here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles OTAs finishing up about an hour ago, and we do have some news up there, Adam Caplan. What's happening, my man?
Yeah, it was good to be out there. Man, it was hot. High 80s, Mike. For the hour and 5 crisp practice, I thought it was kind of funny. You know, I always, just making plans today, I figured I'd be out of there by, 3 o'clock, 3:15. It was over at 2:35. It was only an hour and 35, actually an hour and 37 minutes to be exact. Hour and 7 minutes. But bottom line is it was crisp. I mean, it was a really well-run practice, mostly 7-on-7s, a little bit of teamwork late in practice, but it's your typical mandatory camp stuff. The energy was better. You know what? I could be wrong. I didn't hear music. You know, Mike, these practices many, many years ago, practices with Chip Kelly, you remember the music, the techno music at practice? I didn't hear any. I don't remember hearing any. That's why I could actually hear people speaking. If it was very low. But it was, to summarize this, though, it was a crisp practice. We'll get into kind of some of the stuff that I saw and stuff that was interesting. In fact, one thing definitely very surprising, which we'll get into, and some of the depth chart stuff, again, as I warn people, what you see today, you may not see tomorrow. In fact, the media didn't get a lot. Obviously, we're not allowed at OT practices very much. And there were a couple things that happened at OTAs when the media wasn't there, which we saw today, which we'll get into.
All right, well, let's get into some things. And, yes, one of the big stories, was James Bradberry. Was he going to show up? Was he not going to show up? It's a mandatory. He did show up, but they didn't play him where you think they would have played him.
Well, okay, so just to be clarified, Nick Sirianni, their head coach, did say that we were going to see James Bradberry at safety today. Remember, he played nickel last year because they had to. They ran out of nickel corners. He obviously played outside corner. But today, Mike, and he's a right cornerback, by the way, we probably would have seen him at safety, but he left practice very early, went into the medical tent within the first 5 minutes. So we never really got to see him at safety. But the big story, Mike, and our Jeff Mosher had this exclusive note for us, the day that Becton traded, in fact, the next day, I think we probably did our Inside the Bird Show, and Jeff said that what they're going to cross-train at guard. And not only see, this is what's interesting, Mike. Lane Johnson did confirm during his press conference today that, and it had to be when the media wasn't there, he actually lined up at some guard. Well, Mike, Landon Dickerson was not there today at left guard. He was the only player not to be there. He had an excused absence. Becton didn't run with the 2s or the 3s. He ran with the 1s, filling in. So I was not expecting that. I figured they'd work him in, maybe with the 3s or the 2s. And what I found interesting, I might be the only person to pick this up. I pick up little small things. Becton looked really smooth. Now, again, we're not watching the practice tape, so we go by what our eyes told you, or look like. So let's not go overboard here. But there's a scouting term. With offensive linemen, how does the player look like coming out of an awkward stance? He did not look awkward. I was surprised. In fact, Lane Johnson kind of, he hit his shoulder and goes, "Good job." So, again, I wouldn't read a lot into it, but he could wind up being the top backup guard. Who knows if this works out? And again, when the media wasn't there, he worked at a guard. That's why no one really knew what Becton was doing of it, because they only saw him lining up at guard. When he wasn't there, he was lining up they saw him lining up at tackle, Mike. Mm-hmm. And then now, when he wasn't there, Lane Johnson confirmed he actually lined up at guard. He did today. So that was kind of stunning to me. Again, second-team guard? In fact, I shouldn't even say that. He ran with the 1s.
The 1 teams, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, and I thought it was interesting at first because, Dickerson not being there, fine, they need a left guard. But if you're going to look at Becton as a guard, would you not give him a shot to get into that right guard competition?
Here's why. Now, again, they've got 2 practices left, and we're going to look into what side did Becton line up at when the media wasn't there in OTAs. Was it right guard, left guard, or both? Don't know. Right. We're going to have to find out. It's a great question you asked, Mike, because I figured Matt Hennessy would line up at left guard today. That didn't happen. That by the way, as we noted last week on our show, he never started a game at right guard. Why would he not line up at left guard where he's more natural? He didn't. Becton did today. Again, I have to preface this because people run with stuff or start thinking things are going to happen. Most stuff that happens that's new in OTAs or specifically mandatory camp, coaches have told me over the years they experiment with stuff just in case something happens. Like Bradberry, I know he played nickel. He started playing inside in training camp. I don't know that he did last year in OTAs or mandatory camp, but I just thought it was interesting. We may see this. This is something in fact, now that they did this, and we're going to find out what the practice tape looked like. It's one thing for my eyes to see, and that's another thing for someone who actually works for the team. And it wasn't Max Sharping who just got there. This is his first practice. But again, we'll move on here in a second. This is just something that was the most notable thing by far at practice today.
Yeah, that's I that caught my eye as well that he was playing the left guard spot there. That's Mekhi Becton, who has been a tackle primarily, obviously former first-round pick with the Jets, filling in for Dickerson, who was excused today. But that's something to keep an eye on. Will Becton be now? Will he get those right guard reps when we get to training camp? Based on what they see here, we'll see about that. Let's go back to the Bradberry thing a little bit because I want to get your opinion, Adam. He's at safety. Does he project as a safety to you at all, or is this just them saying we don't want him in the room, just go play safe? How do you read this?
Mike, no. Okay, let me explain. So this is just called a hypothesis, what's called an educated opinion. It's just kind of where I think this thing is at. He's owed $10.85 million fully guaranteed. They don't want to eat the contract. They know he can't start anymore. You've got Isaiah Rodgers. We'll get into him. Ringo, who worked with the ones today. They kind of know where James is in his career. He obviously fell off completely last season. They didn't expect that, but he did. No one's going to take his contract right now. We're only in early June. They don't have a trade market for him right now. They don't want to eat the money. Well, he's not going to work at corner. And when I say, look, Mike, let me just give you, since you brought this up. Slay's your left corner. Quinyon Mitchell will be the right corner. Right now, because he's not ready yet, Ringo took the work with once. By the way, looked good today. Transition really good. Now, again, I didn't see every rep that he took, but I saw about 9 to 10 reps from him. He looked pretty smooth. And his issue's always been stiffness and transitioning. Looked good today. Well, like it is. Didn't look good to start last season. Looked good late last season, so we'll see. We'll see what this really means over time, but definitely looked good. But if you really look at Isaiah Rodgers now is becoming a factor. Again, we got a long way to go. He looks good. This is the first test that he passed the off-season test, Mike, to show that he's back. Eagles didn't know this. That's why we were reluctant to say anything about his role until they saw him. Everything we've been told privately has been good. Eli Ricks, where I went with the third, it doesn't mean he won't work at the second tomorrow. I wouldn't read into that. And look, Josh Jobs is a special teams player. Only he had some good special teams plays today. Where's James Bradberry fit in at corner, Mike?
I agree with that portion of it. I just, one of the questions we were wondering, Adam, leading into this is, okay, does Vic Fangio say, hey, look, I run a zone scheme. He's a zone corner. I want to see what this guy, like the fact that they're not even giving him a shot to show if he has anything left in the tank.
But, Mike, by the way, it'll be Vic's call. I mean, Howie can't tell Vic what to do. They talk about it, and he may say to him, hey, could you take a look? Because we don't. I'm just hypothetically talking about what the conversation would look like. Hey, could you listen? We don't have a trade market. Could you work them out at another? Could you try somewhere? Because we have young kids who want to look at corner. They could say, hey, yeah, you know what? We have light numbers. Think about it, Mike. Let's go over this. Gardner Johnson and Blankenship are your starters. Sidney Brown is a third safety. Won't be ready till training camp if he's ready at all. Then, or it's a matter of when he's going to be ready. He's taking mental reps. Tristan McCollum was the third safety today, but Tristan McCollum wasn't even on the roster last season, Mike. He was on the practice squad. And Andre Sam's an undrafted rookie who's pretty interesting. I was talking to someone in personnel with another team who mentioned him for me to keep an eye on him. And also, Mekhi Garner is going back from corner and safety. They don't have a third safety now who's really ready. So it makes some sense on the surface. They have a numbers issue at safety. They need safeties.
Yeah.
The corner, they have too many guys. Like last summer, I warned people when they were saying, they have too many corners. No, they don't. They're not good enough for corner.
And the corners you mentioned, just to kind of go back, Ringo ran first team, but Isaiah Rodgers looks like a factor. Mitchell saw him playing a little slot as well. What about Cooper DeJean?
Yeah, I didn't see Mitchell playing slot specifically. It might have been on 7-on-7s, but DeJean played nickel safety. and outside corner and nickel and sub. Now, that's probably – now I know that the new DB's coach wants them to – Christian Parker wants them to eventually, probably training camp, just line up at one position. He's not doing safety, which we know right this year that's not what they want to do. Long-term, would rule that out. By the way, Malcolm Jenkins moved to safety his second year with the Saints. He corner in the first year. So remember, it's when you draft a player specifically in the first or second round, it's how do they project over 4 or 6 years, not just year one. Year one, I get it. They have a specific role in mind, and it's what Howie Roseman said basically after the draft, kind of the way they saw him. But that's it. I mean, it's I didn't see Rodgers in nickel, though, in terms of playing inside. I didn't see that. I know some people wondered about that, but, again, it's kind of early. Didn't see Zach McPherson today. I specifically, I think he's still number 27. And, Mike, the other problem is so many players have changed numbers. Usually I was joking with someone with their PR staff. When I first started covering them, I didn't need a lineup sheet. I knew the numbers by heart. I could maybe name 7 or 8 numbers. It's so hard without looking at a sheet.
Yeah, well, they got a lot of new faces, not in new places, and then changing the numbers as well. Cooper DeJean, second team, nickel stuff, some outside corner. Sure, he'll be bouncing all over the place. You mentioned that corner room. We all been kind of wanting to see what's happening there. Interesting what would be going on. Any linebacking stuff that
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is interesting. And again, this is just an off-season practice. We can't say it's definite. Certainly can't say it's definite, but well, Devin White's going to be a starter. The question is it going to be Nakobe Dean or Bond? It's not. Bond. It was, again, I know Nakobe's coming off a major injury. He had a Liz Frank injury that he had the rupture. So you got to understand, they got to work him in slowly. It's going to take him a while. So I'm not saying he won't start, but let's just give you what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
It was White and Zach Bond who they're cross-training. Right now he's an inside backer. We did not see him line up at outside backer. Remember, basically, Mike, they're 2 inside backer defense. The guys they say are linebackers or edge rushers. They're really not linebackers. Bryce Huff's not a linebacker. He's an edge rusher. The second team defense at ILB was Burks and Van Sumeren. Now, again, Dean's just not ready. He ran with the third team, but we're early here. This is a very short practice. Trotter worked with deep backups, but again, he's a fifth-round rookie. This is the most depth. Now, you could question how good the depth is, but this is the most depth they've had at inside backer, Mike, in several years.
All right, Adam Caplan, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast, and I'm sure more on the Inside the Birds podcast. And got a couple things on the offensive side of the ball. You know, these mini camps, they're for the skill guys a lot of times. John Ross, former first-round pick. By the way, he was picked 9th. Picked 10th was Patrick Mahomes. But John Ross is here. He was picked in the draft number 9 because of his speed. Is he a guy that on this field without the pads looks like he has a shot?
He looked good. Now, again, they just said they have no depth at receiver other than Campbell. Campbell's definitely the 3 because he's the only guy that they have really could play inside or outside, and he's not. I gotta look into this. I don't know who A.J. Brown's backup would be. It would have to be Paris Campbell by default because I don't have anyone else.
Right.
But he doesn't really play that position. He's more of a move position. He's more of a Z, which is Devontae Smith's position. So we're going to look into that. But one of the things I thought was interesting about John Ross, look at my notes is, and I outlined this, he caught a lot of short area passes. I can understand. He didn't just do that in 7-on-7s, though. He did a little bit of that in team. I'm like, all right, maybe it's, I don't know if they asked him to do that or it's a function of coverage. I don't know. Ringo trailed him on trail technique. He did an excellent job on a 9 route. He was with him, which is good. I mean, because this is the thing with Ringo, the knock on personnel people that they had around him in the league is his really poor transition in college at Georgia, and that was it was because of stiffness. Didn't see that today, and you saw him a little bit more fluid late last season. But again, we're early here. We can't make any definitive judgments until we get into training camp when it really matters and where the competition is ratcheted up, because that's when guys win roles. Mike, they don't win roles here. They start to develop roles, but you don't win roles here. Other offensive notes here: Fred Johnson line up as second team, I believe, tackle, because of Becton playing inside. Max Sharping, I only saw I can't remember his number, but Max Sharping, I watched the individual drills. He was just working in the individual drills because this is his first practice. they're so light at receiver, Mike. It's Jacob Harris didn't work today. I was disappointed about that. I don't know what his injury is, but he didn't work today. He's number 46, by the way, for those screwing at home. John Ross is number 83. I watched Austin Watkins. He's the kid that I know a lot of people are excited about. He worked with the third team. Oh, Nia Smith, I should mention this one before we get out of here, number 82. He dropped some punts today, and I know the coaches were getting on him, but this is what happens. And by the way, he was the only one not returning punts well. And another thing that was comical, and I read absolutely nothing into this. I have no idea why Gardner Johnson, number 8, by the way, is C.J. Gardner Johnson's new number. He worked with the punt returners today a little bit, which I have to look into if he's ever done it before, but they had a bunch of guys working at punt return today, including Isaiah Rodgers, by the way.
All right, there you go. A lot of Eagles OTAs. Big news was Becton at guard and Bradberry at safety, as obviously we just talked about with Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. And don't forget, check out the podcast on all podcasting platforms. And the YouTube channel, just search Inside the Birds, and you can get all of their great content over there. And just like Football at 4, which will be back tomorrow with Mosher, Andrew on Thursday, and Adam will be back on Friday. I will not talk to you then, Adam. I will talk to you next week, pal.
I heard you're going to England, Mike. Nice, man.
Yes.
Some beer fest. I heard you yelling yesterday's show. That's pretty cool.
A little high tea for me tomorrow when I
We'll be with Mr. Newman. No, that you would have to know. Well, you know that one, Seinfeld. It's a Seinfeld reference.
Yes, yes, and I got it.
Nice. That's why you said it, yeah. You told me you're not a movie guy, so I can't figure you out, but that's funny.
By the way, did you see Sirianni today? He says, when responding about the Giant fans, he said, we got your best player. I mean,
he's funny. He's a funny guy. I don't know what to make of Nick. He's a good coach. I mean, look, guy had a winning record his first 3 years. But it's just funny that, the tennis thing a couple years ago with a fan he got into it with. You saw what he said in the runway in Kansas City.
Yep,
you just don't know what to make.
Well, you wondered if he was going to scale back a little bit. He definitely was on the hot seat, no question, right?
But you got to be yourself, Mike. You can't be neutered. You can't act like you don't have any juice anymore.
Yep.
Just because he's not calling the plays, it's not his scheme. You got to be yourself. And by the way, he was very active today. He was going from station to station. It's good to see.
I guess it's not. You can't see a lot, but is it evident that he's not like? Does the offense look different? I mean, anything noticeable there yet?
Well, he wasn't calling the plays, but yeah, the only thing. No, I wasn't looking for it. I just noticed it. He was going from station to station, but he's a big observer. Like, remember,
yeah,
Brian Johnson was calling the plays. He hasn't called plays, Nick, since midway of the first season. As a CEO head coach, I know he's involved in offense, but it was his scheme. You would see him go to station. Now, one more thing, I would tell you, when Andy Reid had issues with Jim Washburn and Juan Castillo, he was over with the defense because it was a train wreck. That's a different story. That's because you've got a problem going. You got to make sure you got it under control. Nick here is just a CEO head coach now, even more than before, and he's just walking from station to station. Probably a little bit more, but I wouldn't read into that. It's more because remember he did say today. Because people are trying to figure out how much of the All Eagles offense will even be in this with Kellen Moore. There's no way to know that, and they're not going to tell us that. Nick talked today about some of how they're integrating stuff.
Yeah.
But what Kellen Moore did say last week was they want to keep the stuff that's really, really good. Why would you completely junk it?
Well,
yeah, you're going to run your own scheme and you'll call the plays, but the stuff that Jalen likes, you're going to keep that.
The last thing, push in or out?
Oh, I don't know.
Is that a Kelsey?
They're not doing that. Right? They didn't do that today.
No, obviously no. But is that a Kelsey? Is that predicated from Kelsey?
I don't know. I don't know. That's. There's no way they're getting rid of that. There's just no way.
Gotcha.
They can't. Look. They've created a controversy. That's how good they are at it, Mike. Great question. We won't know until training camp. And before I get out of here, Mike. There's so much we won't know till training camp. Oh, I'll give you one more nugget. We saw some motion today, which we know is going to be in the offense because Moore's offense is based on motion. Did see shifting today, but you're not going to see that until training camp, most likely. How much motion they're going to do, we have no answer to that. We won't know until training camp. But the backs catching the football, we saw some of that. We've been fooled before. I wouldn't read anything into that. There's just so much we're not going to know, but we did see enough today, which we just gave you.
Adam Caplan gives us a lot on this Football at 4. OTAs, good to have football back, hot at the NovaCare Complex. 2 more days of it. We'll have it on tomorrow's Football at 4. Thanks, Adam.
You got it, thanks.
All right, there's Adam Caplan. Great breakdown from him today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.